be assembled here today in the presence of our God, our political leader, the Right Honourable Owen Arthur, parliamentarians, both present and former, candidates, chairman, executive, and members of the National Council, members and supporters of the Barbados Labour Party, Canon Noel Titus, all members of the clergy and faith represented, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to welcome you to this service to commemorate and celebrate the first election held under Universal Adult Suffrage. Today's service is fitting for the purpose of observing the 60th anniversary of this historic event that represents the legacy of a glorious struggle for equality, dignity, and social and political emancipation of the ordinary Barbadian. Universal Adult Suffrage, that seminal, singular achievement, ushered in an era of democracy otherwise unknown to Barbadians, at a time when the right to vote was held by a privileged few who qualified based on status of wealth. Led by our fearless, visionary, politically passionate, and just founding father, the Right Excellent Grantley Herbert Adams, against tremendous odds and unqualified sacrifice, the struggle to afford every Barbadian that right was relentlessly fought on the belief that the foundation of equality and progress rested on no less than the inalienable right of every man and woman, regardless of race, social and economic status, or creed, to fully participate in the process of governance and self-determination. The law which gave legitimacy to this cause was achieved in 1950. It was a bitter fight, and the right was not easily surrendered, but it forever banished from the practice of our political exercise the brutal and discriminatory economic franchise and gave to all the right to choose for themselves. This was perhaps the most important step along the journey to independence. It allowed for the expression of the popular will of every Barbadian in the highest decision-making forum of the country. Today, with pride and gratitude, we look back at that time. We enjoy and celebrate the benefits of the present and look to the future, knowing that we will be eternally grateful to those men and women who championed the cause that allowed us all to exist as equals in the determination of our nation's destiny. We stand proud and at the same time humbled to be associated with this great cause. For today, the struggle continues to work with and on behalf of our fellow Barbadians to defend and make the sacred worth of the vote known and understood, and to place in the hands of every Barbadian that powerful tool, that instrument of social change that creates for you and I, and for our children for generations to come, an environment for political and social motivation. I implore you, you must not treat this right lightly. You must ensure that those to whom you vest your confidence consider this vote sacrosanct, where their manifesto, their word, is indeed a social contract to act on your behalf, in your best interest, and at all times, to the best of their abilities, labor to provide a better life for our people.
The first lesson is to be found on page 5 of your booklets, and it's taken from Exodus 3, from verses 1 to 15. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire, out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look on the Lord. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of that land unto a good land, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I, that I should go unto the Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you. And they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Here is it.
Free to say He served the Anglican Church on various commissions in the Diocese of Trinidad, also in the Diocese of Barbados, and he served in various capacities in the Northeastern Caribbean as well as in Aruba. He served both as a lecturer and as principal at the Codrington College in St. John. He's authored 3 books and many articles on social history. He served in several regional and international organizations, including subsidiary councils of the World Council of Churches. He holds postgraduate degrees in theology from Durham University, history from the University of the West Indies, the MA in theology, the MA in history, and his doctorate in history from the University of the West Indies. We're pleased to invite Captain Dr. Noel Titus to share the word with us this afternoon. Shall we stand, please?
Let us bow our heads. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be now and always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. It is indeed a great privilege and an honor to be asked to share in this service, and sharing it at a most controversial time in the relations between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. I can assure you that I have nothing to do with it. Neither the migration of the fish or the lack of an agreement. But I trust that, as others have said, there will soon be a resolution. The Caribbean cannot afford not to have one. Like my colleague said earlier, I was not here in 1951. Indeed, my relationship with Barbados in the 1950s was rather like a tourist. I passed through in 1957, note after Janet, and I came back in 1959 to Codrington College, and I left in 1961 to go to Durham. So I have been rather migratory as far as Barbados was concerned, but I did return in 1972, and I've been here ever since. I trust that what I have been able to do will not be in vain. I want to share with you some words from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3 and verse 6. And I'm using here a translation from the English Standard Version. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. The Christians at Corinth were anything but models of what St. Paul expected them to be. They developed among them very early a tendency to rally around individual leaders, Paul, Cephas, or Apollos, for whatever reason, with the result that the congregation in that city was greatly fragmented. St. Paul eschewed the party spirit which ensued, and this led to his having to exert himself in order to ensure that some semblance of unity was preserved. Part of his answer to the phenomenon of division was that it was not the individual evangelist who mattered most, but God, who enabled the efforts of the human laborers to bear fruit. the lesson he sought to teach was that all the leaders had the same purpose, the same objective, and that the actions of the various cliques which emerged were likely to lead not just to division, but to divisiveness, the practice of creating division. In that regard, they were likely to lose sight of their own purpose as Christians and were in danger of creating a kind of tribalism which ultimately could result in self-destruction. His analogy served to show the complementary character of the work of Paul and Apollos, whom he described as merely servants through whom they came to be believers. As I pondered what I might contribute to this observance, I felt myself being led more and more to the use of this analogy as my starting point for today's reflections. It is an analogy which can apply to any organization, such as this one. It did apply to the early congregation in Corinth, which Paul himself had started. It is an analogy which can apply to the region, and certainly to this nation. One gets an increasing sense of division, such as one ought not to feel at a time of the celebration of national independence. Indeed, it is open to question whether our celebration really took place in an atmosphere of unity, or whether division, even divisiveness, remains endemic to our society. It is that sense of enduring division which leads me to ask whether what we celebrate today should not have been a national observance. For to me, the right to vote and the independence of the nation are inextricably linked. And I seriously doubt whether the latter would have been achieved when it was without the former. This led me to some personal reflections on the meaning of it all. And I want to emphasize that I'm not interested in merely repeating facts, but trying to ask the question, what is it all about? As I reflected on these things, I felt myself thinking of structures. When people describe a house or some other building, this one for example, what they often describe is the superstructure, that which they see in its finished form, imposing and perhaps impressive to behold. Yet what they see might not be the most important part of the structure. Attractive though it might be, it could not be sound and enduring unless it had a solid foundation. To be specific, there would not have been any mandate from the people for independence to be pursued unless they were able to vote for their respective representatives and for what they wanted of them. The extension of the suffrage had made it possible for those chosen as representatives of the people to enunciate the real needs of the people and to set in train those social developments that might not otherwise have come to pass for some time yet. The property qualifications that were required and the interests of those who had property had ensured a gap in the outlook of people and representatives. However, the right to vote introduced a momentous change in the life of the people of Barbados. Admittedly, how that right is exercised will determine how mature our electorate has become and how well we have progressed as a nation. But the grant of that right is a benefit for which we must all give thanks. Under the old system, the general population had very little choice given the limited franchise. The wider suffrage permitted the people greater choice of those whom they wished to have as their representatives. Such choice enabled them, ironically, to cast a historic vote in December 1961. When they removed from office those who had made it possible for them to vote. And they have changed regimes regularly ever since. It was a part of that newfound power to choose, and notwithstanding the effort, giving them that choice is worthy of commendation and thanksgiving. Today, therefore, is a day of thanksgiving for a critical change which materially affected how this nation developed. But a question of importance for me, as one who was not here, is, are we commemorating all that this change implied, or only a part of it? You will forgive me if I look at it with my eyes, and if I do not just see what others have told me. Permit me to ask this body to reflect with me on what I consider some significant issues that emerged in the process of making this change. The proposed change asked legislators to express their valuation of the people they claimed to be representing, and to approve those first steps being taken towards a new order. What was proposed and agreed by no means constituted a completed house, but it certainly represented a foundation worthy of the edifice built upon it later. It is something to be proud of, as long as we all recognize that, as in a relay, someone else may receive and carry the baton for a while. The proposed change said that no one should be considered not good enough either to vote or to sit in the parliament of this country unless disqualified by criminality or insanity. Sir Grantley gave insanity as his only qualification. It was the foundation for a worthwhile superstructure. For all these reasons, I repeat that what was done 60 years ago is worthy of national recognition. It was not done for a party. It was done for the nation. It was part of a process of self-recognition sweeping across the region, leading to civil and political developments in different territories. We give thanks to God for the breadth of vision which it represents, for the plan which was placed on the drawing board at that time for the nation. I planted, Apollos watered. The principle which these words enunciate is not only of importance to the church, it is of importance to every organization and to the entire nation. It is a principle which calls for the recognition of the contribution made by many persons to the development of this nation and its premier institutions. It is never true for any party or group to say that all that is good was done by our group or party and that the others did nothing. History will not support such extravagance. Such an approach unnecessarily promotes tribalism and spreads the disease which St. Paul tried so hard to eradicate in that ancient congregation at Corinth. Future generations must not be saddled with the shock of discovering that what they were made to believe was not quite in accordance with the truth. If I may say so, the principle of St. Paul calls for a new political culture, which does not seek to destroy what others have done, but is prepared to build up and continue the good that others started. It would be hypocritical on our part to criticize regimes overseas which thrive on self-interest and self-aggrandizement, while practicing the same thing in our context, albeit in a less aggressive or inhumane manner. As a practicing historian, I have always been grieved at the fact that our hostility towards each other is providing fodder for the negative assessments of researchers from outside our region. And I can only hope that we spare future generations the misfortunes of having to discover that what they learned constituted avoidable distortions. The principle stated by St. Paul asks us to show respect to others, even those with whom we disagree from time to time. For I believe that in respecting others, we only respect ourselves. And at the time of reading that, at the time of my arrival, I had no idea what the second lesson was about. But remember, he said, render to all their due. I pray that that respect for others and real unity in our society will be our legacy to those who come after. Amen.
I want to begin by thanking those who have the thoughtfulness to arrange this evening's event. I want especially to thank the reverend gentlemen who have participated and blessed us with their words and their presence. The Royal Barbados Police Force Band for a wonderful rendition. For those who enriched this evening's occasion in song, I want to thank all of the members of the party and the public for your attendance. I could not help noticing that all who spoke before me sought to lay a claim to youthfulness by saying that they were not around in 1951 when adult suffrage was conferred on the people of Barbados. I can lay claim to no such inexperience. But speaking from a more mature vantage point, must acknowledge that it was a brave day. And although I never shared with you any recollections of this significant event, I can speak to you about its historic symbolism. We fight for a victory that was won by Randy Adams and his pioneers in bringing adult suffrage to this country. Simply the greatest single accomplishment by the Barbados Labour Party as a political institution. It is what laid the foundation for Barbados to evolve as a modern, but more importantly so, a just and a good society. And very often when I tell you that I am humbled, I'm overwhelmed, but I'm also inspired when I reflect on the fact that I have to stand where Granny Adams stood. It is precisely because I fully understand the significance of what that fight for adult suffrage meant for persons like myself. Because without that fight, I could never have ascended to the height of being a leader of this country. It is also true that the fight for adult suffrage brought about the second great act of liberation in this country. The first great act of liberation was the emancipation of people from servitude. But the right to vote brought about two transformations in Barbados that we must be thankful for. As was so wonderfully and eloquently spoken about by Canon Titus, it laid the foundation for Barbados to proceed to independence, but also to proceed to building the kind of society that we have become. It allowed for national development in a way that national development would not have been possible. But it also did something more important. It brought to an end a great inequality and a great injustice. An inequality and an injustice that sometimes is more personal than we perhaps want to recall. And let me speak about my own family. My father's father was a member of the ascendancy planter class. He served in the vestry ascendancy. He contributed to elections as people's election agent. He had a right to vote and to participate in the political process. My father's mother, a mere lady, equal before God in every other respect, had no right to vote, no right to participate in the political process. They were equal as parents, but unequal as citizens. And that great inequality, once it stood, was a stain on the character of this nation. And we must, as we celebrate today, and as we always must rejoice in this achievement, speak not only to the national aspects of it, but speak more sincerely to the way in which this right to vote removed that tremendous stain of inequality from the landscape of Barbados. And what do I say to the persons who, like me, although in a different way, stand where Randy Adams stood, because we are all inheritors of his legacy. That in a sense the task of nation building continues, and it will take other and different forms than that which challenge Randy Adams and his pioneers. The task of eradicating inequality, injustice, poverty continues. And that when we, in our own times, may have to find different ways of perpetuating the fight to ensure national development, to ensure that Barbados becomes a just and good society in every dimension, that we must not lose sight of the heritage that was created for us. That good heritage that we celebrate today. And I want to say especially to the young ones who were not born in 1951, that you must see yourselves as being as visionary and as capable of the kind of achievements that Bradley Adams was capable of, that we celebrate today. That this present generation of Labour Party people, of Barbadians, politicians, must not see themselves as being any less worthy and capable of making great changes and great transformation that can touch people's lives with better. And that is precisely why we must continue to be called to public service and perform public service to the very best of our ability. So that I would urge all within the sound of my voice to leave here this evening to go forward and in your own way and in your own time draw from the legacy that we are celebrating this evening to make your mark on this society. And that you should perhaps remember the words of that poet who told us that the lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime and departing leave behind us footprints on the sand of them. God bless the Barbados Labour Party, and God bless our fair land now and forever.
There is a candle in every soul, some brightly burning, some dark and cold. But there is a spirit who brings a fire and ignites a candle and makes his home. So carry your candle and run to the darkness. Seek out the hopeless, the confident. your world, your world, your world. Take your candle.